Welcome to the Ultimate Modern Warfare 3 settings guide, where I'll be showing you how to improve your aim, your frames per second, your visibility, the audio cues, everything that you could possibly think of is going to be in this video to help you improve at the game. Now I'm going to start off by saying I use an Xbox Elite Series 2 controller here. It's got all the bells and whistles, the back paddles, the triggers that you can change so they don't go all the way down, so you get a better trigger finger and all that good stuff with it. This is by no means necessary, of course, and they can be quite expensive, particularly some of the scuff ones that are out now. But if you want to take your game to the next level and really see an improvement in your game overall, because I'm a firm believer these really do work, invest a little bit of your time and your money in getting a control of all the bells and whistles and all back paddles. But with that all out the way, we're going to jump straight into what I used for my controller settings. The button layout, I use a tactical layout, so what that basically means is it swaps your crouch and your melee button around. That's basically it. I have them on the back paddles anyway, so it's not a huge difference for me. But I'd highly recommend, if you don't use that system, then you probably should, because it just makes it so much easier to crouch and jump and get those drop shots in, because you're never really in a position to start meleeing people all that often. So I find that swap is a massive help. Bumper ping, you can turn that off, and the flip left bumper to left trigger and the right bumper to right trigger buttons, I have that turned off. I know there's a few pros, I think, that have this turned on, and it basically just means that they're shooting with the right bumper instead of the triggers. I think it means it's probably better for people to play claw on controller, but that's a no for me. We're going to leave that one off. Stick layout preset is going to be set to default. We'll just leave that. Some of them are proper wacky and crazy inverted controls, they're mental. And the controller vibration, we'll have that set to off. I just have that set to off. If you want to feel a bit more immersed, you can have that turned on, but I think once you're in those big gunfights and you've got your controller vibrating all over the place, it can put your aim off ever so slightly. Now, one of the newer things in the controller settings for this year's Call of Duty is the dead zone inputs, and you can actually test for your dead zone in the game. It's a really, really cool feature that I'm really impressed that they've put this in. So if you've had a controller for probably more than even 6 months, no matter how much you spend on it, there's going to be a slight chance you have some sort of stick drift. I've had my controller for about 2 years now. I do have ever so a small amount of stick drift, which I can test here for you. At the moment, yeah, there you go. It's just moved ever so slightly on the left one, and the right one tends to move just slightly there to the left. It's nowhere near as bad as some people, as you see, and it's just going all over the place crazy. And then by that point, you probably should just invest in a new controller. But as you can see, mine aren't too bad. It goes a little bit there, 3 or 4, maybe up to 5 on the right stick. So as you can see, with the left stick, I've got it to 3, and the right stick, I've set it to 5. Those are pretty much perfect, and even if you don't have any stick drift at all, I would suggest not having it all the way down to 0 anyway. I think it's probably just best to have it at least 3 as in bare minimum. And then when it comes to aiming sensitivity, I have mine on 5.5. I think 6.6 is an absolute standard and what a lot of pros and players use. I think 6.6 is probably the go-to one, or at least the one you should probably start with, and then you can adjust. I wouldn't ever go below 4 at the absolute minimum, and I probably wouldn't go above 8 as the absolute most. I'd play in 5.5 just because I'm getting a bit older now and finding it a bit harder, and my ADS sensitivity multiplier is probably a bit lower than what most people use. I would say, again, the standard is 0.75, so mix around the 0.75 to 8 mark on that. Just play private matches against bots, or just play loads and loads of games and just get a feel for yourself. But as I say, I think a range between 4 and 6 is probably the best for your horizontal and vertical sensitivity. Now, over the years, the aim response curve type, we've seen everyone from your aunt and uncle to your granny and granddad say you should be using standard, linear, dynamic, all of these others. In the past, I think it's been more just use standard, but in this game and in the Modern Warfare 2 before this, I would say the dynamic is the best aim response curve type that you should be using, so put that one on. And obviously, it goes without saying, make sure you have aim assist toggled on down here. Aim assist type, again, that's one that a lot of people have been saying you should use Black Ops for in the past, but the default one is the absolute best. Don't even question on that one. Use default for that, and then these are the other settings here you can quickly copy down. Now, for the gameplay section, I'm going to quickly try and rattle off through some of the more important ones that I feel free to pause the video at any point, and while you're doing it, give it a like and a subscribe. Comment down below if you found this video useful, or just an emoji, because it helps out massively for engagement. Thank you. Automatic sprint to automatic tactical sprint. We have this set to off. Single tap to run. Ground mantle, automatic airborne mantle, and automatic ground mantle /hang are all to off. The mantling and movement is so quick in this game, you don't need to have those automatically vaulting you over things. So just have those off, because you don't want to be accidentally yeeting yourself over something that you don't want to. One of the most important settings in this list is the slide/dive behavior. You set that to slide only in this game. And then plunging underwater. In multiplayer, I think there's only one map in sub-base where you can actually go underwater. So this one's more for your Warzone, which there's going to be a lot of water on the Urzikstan map. So you have that to set to free. Parachute deployment to off. Sprinting door bash, personal preference. I like this being able to smash through that door, swing it open, and you catch people camping in the building off guard by doing that. So you have that set to on. Mantle only and on for that one. And then I'm just quickly going to slide through these ones again. A lot of these are the tactical stance behaviors, which I haven't had too much time to test the tactical stance, apart from getting a few gold camos, but I've been using the hardcore for that. So I think it's a bit too early for me to be suggesting what you should and shouldn't be using for tactical stance. And again, there's some more Warzone settings in here, like the backpack behavior, etc. Now moving on to the graphics side of things, I've got 3080, so it's not the highest high end of graphics cards, but again, it's not the lowest of the lows. And I'm reaching around 200 FPS in most of the games using settings that I've got, so make sure you are copying all these down. Make sure you've got the full screen exclusive on. Anything else is going to massively impact your frames. It just does. I'm not too sure why, but I think it just prefers having that one screen on. Brightness, have it set to 55. Preset is to 50. That's absolutely fine if you like it. You can turn it up more if you want a bit more visibility, but then it just kind of takes away from the game itself, I feel. And 55 is that kind of sweet spot for me. And then NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, have that on plus boost. Eco mode, I have it set to custom and pretty much off for all the VSync stuff. I'm not too worried about being economically friendly while I'm trying to kill people inside of a video game, to be perfectly honest with you. And then those are the rest of the settings in this subcategory. For quality, have it set to custom, and then the main one here is the upscaling / sharpening. Have that to Fidelity X CAS. Make sure you have that one on. And then these are the big boy settings, which will massively help your frames inside of the game. Texture resolution, there's a lot of these, there's not going to be too much difference if you have it set to high or normal. You will save yourself a few frames, but if you go from, say, normal to low or very low, not only, I mean, you'll get a lot more frames by doing that, but your game would look horrible. So I would, for a lot of these, recommend normal is probably the lowest of the low, but if we get some, I'll quickly explain why. But normal for texture resolution, I have it high for texture filter, depth of field, turn that off. Detail quality is set to normal. This is one of those ones that you can see in the graphic there. If you have it to low, things just look like a yellow blob, that flower. But if it's normal or high, it actually looks a bit better. And it really doesn't save too much for your frames if you have it all the way down to low. Particle resolution is one of the ones that I do have set to very low. Purely because if their flashbang or grenade goes off, it's a split second. And you don't really have the time to take in, oh, that looks really pretty. So that is set to low, and in that immediate second where flashbang will go off, that can impact your frames quite significantly. As you can see, I've got some of these starred as my quick settings, so by all means feel free to go into a game, have these set as a quick setting, and then you can just change them on and off, up and down, and see what works best for you and your computer. Bullet impacts, you can have these turned off. I have them turned on. I just quite like the look of them, and again, they don't really affect the frames of your computer. Persistent effects, turn to off. Shader quality is then one of those where if you have it on high, it can tank your frames. Medium's got that sweet spot again, and then if you have it any lower than that, then it just makes the game look horrible, in my opinion. And then on-demand texture streaming, we have that turned off. I don't want to be using any more of my limited internet that I've got here out in the sticks than I need to be. Shadow quality, set that to normal. Again, there's not a huge amount of difference here in the images, unless you go right to the very low one, so stick to normal. And then we have all these set to off, 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 and off, because yet again, yes, it can look a bit nicer, say for that one, the reflections in the water there, but while you're racing around the maps, you don't have time to take in that, and it does just tank your performance quite significantly, so have all these set to off. And then again, just as I mentioned, we have this set off because there's barely any difference in those pictures there. Minimum on terrain memory, low on this one, off, low, and off for water quality. And then when it comes to view, my field of view I set to 105 just for multiplayer. If I'm playing Warzone, I'll crank that up to 110. I wouldn't really recommend going above that because you see a lot of people that recommends going 120, but the problem if you go 120 is obviously people far away from you are going to be really small and going to be quite hard to actually get your shot on. So if you have it ever so slightly closer, they'll look bigger to you from your perspective, and it's easier to hit your shots. A lot of pros, in particular, when they play multiplayer in Call of Duty, they have theirs from 95 to 105. So 105 for me is probably the absolute most of multiplayer. And as I say, if you're playing Warzone, crank that up to about 110, but I wouldn't go any higher than that. ADS field of view, I have that set to affected, and weapon field of view to wide. It just gives you that extra screen space to be able to see what you actually want to see on the screen. And field of view for vehicles is set to wide, but unless you're playing loads of ground war and getting your tanks and choppers or Warzone, I wouldn't worry too much about that one. And of course, no matter what game you're playing, always turn off world motion blur, weapon motion blur, and film grain. Already it's set to 0. Those settings, I don't even know why they bother putting them in games anymore, because it literally just makes you feel sick having all that blur on your screen. So every game I play, straight away, all those settings to off. And then finally, we move on to the interface settings here. A lot of these, again, personal preference. You can change around the menu text size if you need to. The main one we're going to look at here is the color customization. You have these set to custom. You can change these colors to whatever suits you at all. I've seen people play with like purple for enemies or even green for enemies, which I find crazy, but I guess it helps them see it a bit more clearly. I haven't changed them too much. All I've really done is, I think it was originally that color yellow as myself. I've just made that brighter. Same with the blue. I've just made it a brighter blue, brighter green, brighter red, and so on and so forth, just so it stands out a little bit more. And the most important part in these settings is filter 2 for this one, for the color filter. Have it set to both, so that's the world inside the games, what you see, and your interface, and you crank these all the way up to 100. It just makes the colors pop just that little bit more, and just makes the game feel a bit nicer, personally. And then the last setting here is just going to be the telemetry, is just the settings that you see along the top. It shows your frames and your packet loss, etc. These are the ones I have on, the ones that I find most useful, in particular the GPU time and CPU processing time. If ever I've got a bit of lag or packet loss or something, I can quickly just glance up to the top of my screen and see what on my computer is being affected, and if I need to change something, I know it straight off the bat. Well, that concludes today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if that's been helpful to you at all, and leave a like and subscribe and ring that notification bell whilst you're down there. And as always, I hope you'll have a wonderful day.